we're moving up on the election real close now, a week and a half or so, and we'll be right up onto it. So Donald Trump has had his rally at Madison Square Garden, and I thought it was real interesting that Tim Walz had compared the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden to a rally of Nazi sympathizers that happened back in 1939. And that's very interesting. First of all, because it's not in any way similar. I mean, there is that. Like, for example, you have Tulsi Gabbard, and we have RFK Jr. speaking, and Dr. Phil is there. And when you really are honest, if you know anything about the Nazis, you'd know that a Trump rally in New York is very much different and not in any way similar to a meeting of Nazis. It's just like a clickbaity kind of a thing that the left has said to try to get a rise out of people, to try to be inflammatory. But the reality is it's not cool to say that you're political opposition, to say that half of America, to a point, is fascists or authoritarian or totalitarian. And when you do that, well, the truth is, it's like abusers who always call their victims as abusers or blame their victims for doing what they're doing. It's kind of like that. That's what I see is happening. But when they stoop to such low levels, it really undermines any valid cases that they may have. And in any case, I think that the left is so determined right now to defeat the right, which they think is politically evil, that they're willing to essentially destroy themselves in the process. It's like fighting the dragon, and you don't care if you die as long as the dragon dies, so you're willing to sacrifice your own life to take it down. That's kind of like how the Democrats are looking at this right now. They don't care if they destroy themselves, if they destroy Western civilization, if they destroy our country, as long as they've managed to destroy their opposition in the process. And that's a very toxic way to be. But it's also a dangerous thing, because the truth of the matter is that Western civilization has been a very good thing. It's been a good thing for quite some time. Not a perfect thing, mind you, but a good thing. It's been the founding force for free market capitalism. It's been a powerful force for the principle of democratic styles of government instead of church states or totalitarian states or socialist ones, or any of the various things which fall more in the territory of oligarchy than liberty. And it was what gave birth to a lot of the amazing stories and myths and traditions which go back to Greece and Alexandria and all of antiquity. So there's a lot of value here, and it's Judeo-Christian values, but it's a lot of other values that are added in there. It's just the entire package of things which has led us to where we are. And there's people who feel like because that's not totally black and white and is filled with darkness as well as good, that we should just tear it all down, that we shouldn't have any respect for ourselves. And that's the problem, that one of the problems with the left. We have this attitude that because we are part of something that is imperfect, we should therefore destroy the entire essence of it, and that anything that's not us is inevitably must be better than what we are, because we've come to be rather self-hating of sorts. It's like a teenager that's living with their parent, and their parent wants what's best for them, but their parent is also controlling and not very kind sometimes, and so the child goes into rebellion mode. And it's really just, at that point, it's a thing where you're saying, you know, I just want to rebel, and I don't care how I get away. I just want to escape being under the thumb of my parents, and I'm gonna just get out of here and go with whoever will help me break out of this joint. And it doesn't matter at that point, right? It don't make a difference whether the person who comes to get you out, if you're that kid, it don't matter if that's a person who doesn't have your best interests at heart. You're gonna side with them because they're not your parents, and you could wind up selling your soul to the devil that way. And that's very apparent when we look at things like the way life is in the Middle East, or the way it is in some totalitarian country somewhere, and you see people, you have like LGBTQ people waving Palestinian flags. All right, well, what the heck are you thinking? Because the truth is, a dominant Muslim country is going to want you dead. So what is the objective? Like, are you saying that you want them to win? Because if they win and have their way, then they aren't going to be pushing inclusivity. They're going to be pushing you off the edge of a building. So if you want to preserve a option to have inclusiveness in our society, you really have to stop saying we want to destroy our society. We want to destroy America. We want to apologize for our existence. You know, same thing, you know, it's like all this gender politics going on. Like, isn't it pretty ridiculous that, you know, like, we are supposed to be, you know, not acknowledging that there's any difference between genders at all anymore? But let's be real, because the truth is, a man is going to be drafted to go and die in a war, and a woman isn't. So, you know, like, there's that scene where Kamala Harris was asked, like, is there any laws that are unfair to men? Like there's tons of laws unfair to women, but there's none unfair to men. And she just was like, yeah, that's true, you know, but what about the draft? Because, like, you know, like, yeah, guys could be drafted to go to war, women can't. So, like, there is that. So, you know, body autonomy, I guess. Like, you can choose to kill a unborn child inside of you, and that's a crime. But if someone forces you yourself to be killed, that is, I guess, fine. So there's that, right? Well, anyways, so you know, I guess I look at all of this momentum amongst people on the left, and I think, you know, when I look at all the different demographics, like, I think about all the woke stuff in video games, like, that's been a big topic of discussion lately. I think about the things that are important to men in general, like, not gay men, just regular men in general. I think about what is important to average working people, blue-collar people, union workers, all the different normal folks in society, rural America, legal migrants that don't like illegal immigration because they did come into America through the legal process, people who follow some variety of faith and don't like the government undermining their beliefs. You know, when you go through all these different groups of people, and more, it just seems like people on the left will always say that they're including everybody, and it's all about including the entire, you know, the entire community of all people are included under this one banner on the left. But then it's not, though, because they only care about accepting people if those people agree with them. Just like this whole thing that it was said that the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden was like the equivalent of a Nazi rally. Like, that's what Tim Walz said, which is a slap in the face of the 50% of America that disagrees with his platform. In any case, though, it's there's Tulsi Gabbard. She was there. She's a minority. She's a woman. She's eloquent. She speaks well. I guess Tim Walz thinks that she's basically a fascist. There's RFK Jr. He used to be a Democrat. I guess he falls under that banner of a political extremist. Dr. Phil's even there talking about how important it is not to let the political left bully you just because you believe different. Well, guess what? I guess they're going to say that he's a far right extremist too. Like, really? I mean, so I guess the bottom line is anyone who disagrees is a fascist. Anyone who disagrees is an enemy of the state. And it doesn't matter what minority you're part of. It doesn't matter what group of people you're from. It only matters if you agree. And if you don't agree, then, they don't care. They don't want you. It's like people say, if you express your opinion, they'll say, oh, you don't really mean that because you don't have the ability to think for yourself. So we're going to think for you and we're going to steer you the right way. And if you say, no, I actually have this thought on my own, like that's what I really believe, I came up with it on my own, then they'll say, well, get out of here, you're a heretic. So the left has become like a religion. Like, that's what it is. Like, that's the crazy thing, because pragmatic liberalism, it always used to be a thing where you can combine all different ideas and thoughts and different perspectives on life under one banner, and we can talk about all those things. But now it's not really like that anymore. Now it's more like the left just wants to rebel against anything that's any form of tradition whatsoever, and burn down the ship we're on, because God forbid somebody that we don't want is at the helm. So what's it all boil down to? Well, I guess it boils down to I oppose folks who want to censor voices that disagree. I oppose people who are going to do things that make me feel like a victim and then say that I am the aggressor. Anyone who's been in an abusive relationship of any kind knows that people who abuse other people tend to accuse their victims of the very things that they are doing. And as much as I'm not a religious person, I also think that there's people who will try so hard to escape the idea of God that they instead go down the path of trying themselves to nominate themselves as God and say there's no such thing as absolute truth, there's no such thing as any kind of tradition that's of value. We just want to rip the entirety of civilization down so we can come up with some kind of a new deal. And that's like reinventing the wheel. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel, because wheels are not a bad thing. Yes, they're an old thing, but they're not a bad thing. So free markets, whether you're talking all the way back to the East India Trading Company, connecting the world together through trade, believing that people can and should be able to advance themselves through the free pursuit of economic interests, that's important. Free speech and avoiding censorship and allowing people to say whatever they want and do as they wish, even if we disagree with them, that's very important. And then finally, this belief in exceptionalism is very important, because If you don't believe that you have value, how are you going to be a good leader in the world? How are you going to be a light of inspiration in anything whatsoever? You've got to believe that you're part of something that matters, something that is worthy of being preserved. We need to believe in the exceptional nature of our country. We need to believe in the beauty of our dreams, and we need to stop trying to destroy every form of tradition in the name of some kind of woke New Deal. Just like this whole thing about what is a woman and women's rights and all that. So you have people saying that we are all about empowering women, women's rights, and then out of the same mouth we're saying that it's offensive politically if you have the guts to say that a woman is different than a man. So how does that all add up? See, somehow we go so deep down a path of making stuff up that now acknowledging the existence of women is essentially considered to be an insult against women's rights. You can't advocate for something when you're also trying to eliminate all reference to its existence. What it boils down to is this homogenization and watering of everything down into a single universal blob of goo. And it's just like if you went to the buffet and you load up a little bit of every single thing at the buffet, and then you take your fork and you just mash it all together. And you say, that is what inclusion is all about. Now you're going to eat it all together. Eat your apple pie mixed in with your lobster, mixed in with your mashed potato and your, I don't know, ice cream. It's all going to mix together, and you're going to just eat it as a puree, and you're going to love it. And if you don't love it, then that's an insult to the chef. Well, no, it's not an insult to the chef. It's an insult to your discretion because you're a fool. That's what it is. And that's what we're doing, where everything has to get mashed together and everything has to be included. If you don't include everything, then that's supposed to be a problem. And at the same time, if you allow the different things to be separate while you include the things that you like the most, well, then you're, I guess they'll say you're a bigot or something. I don't know. But the bottom line is, like, I just made another video about kind of my thoughts on what is it like to be a man. What does that mean? Well, I think we all know what it means if we're men. Right? Like, you don't really need somebody to explain what it means to you. You just know what it means, and you know what it ain't. And, it's just that simple. And the more time's gone on, I think that we have kind of been hijacked by minority groups who are not reflecting our broader voices. They don't represent us, they represent themselves. And then they try to project their small, weird ideas onto everyone and say, if you don't like this, then you are the problem. And the truth is, they are the problem. Now, that does not mean that I believe that we should have a single party system. It does not mean that I don't believe in Democrats. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just, bottom line, I couldn't have said it better. RFK Jr. said this. He said, I did not leave the Democratic Party. He said, the Democratic Party left me. And that's true. Because I remember when I was, a while ago, I would walk around downtown Seattle, spent a lot of time in Seattle. It was a liberal city. It was a highly educated city. It was a clean city. It was all about, recycling and getting an education and all of those pragmatic liberal principles that made it feel like a city of the world. And I loved it. And I still do. But you know what? When 2021 or whatever it was, when they were taking over police precincts and burning stuff and smashing windows and all that kind of thing, and and you know, summer of love while the homeless camps expand all over the streets and the police department gets ostracized and all that kind of stuff. Well, no, that wasn't what I remember. That wasn't what I was advocating for. That's not what I wanted. See, pragmatic liberalism is about having a big tent and everybody has a place under that tent, and we don't have to all agree, but we're going to be distinct, and we're gonna you know, share a certain commonality anyway. And it's not about saying that we have to agree, and I think that's a major distinction that needs to be made. Like, even if I'm making videos, like, I talk about things, I try to come up with new ideas, stuff I want to talk about. And you know what? I love to see people's responses, and I also don't expect all those responses to agree with me. Like, that's the whole point. It's not to collect a whole bunch of statements that 100% align with each other. The whole idea is to have a discussion, and maybe somebody thinks I'm full of crap, maybe somebody has something to add, but you know what? It helps me not to be a 100% an echo chamber, just hearing my own thoughts on repeat inside my head. It's nice to have a discussion. It's nice to have feedback. And that's really what it's all about, you know? And we need the distinctiveness of different people with unique ideas. Sometimes those ideas don't seem like they fit together very well. Sometimes it's messy. But, you know, it's like I used to be attended the Masonic Lodge, and in Freemasonry, you have this parliamentary procedure you go through to open and close lodge, and you have a Bible on the altar in there. It's kind of like kind of the style of religion, but it's not a religious organization. Anyways, I guess maybe I should make a video about that very thing after a while, because it is interesting. But the point I'm getting at is you have Bible on the altar. Maybe I got a Quran there, the Torah, whatever, just a religious book of every person's faith there. And the reason is not because we believe in all those different books. It's to respect the unique beliefs of each person there. And you're not asked to give up your beliefs. You're not asked to homogenize them. And maybe they don't agree with each other, but within the walls of that room, everyone lays aside their differences enough to respect each other. But that does not mean that they give up their beliefs. And, you know, the Freemasons, famously during the Civil War, there were times when there was Confederates in the South fighting the people in the North, but even though they were soldiers fighting on two opposite sides in the war, there were stories where they would lay aside their weapons, they'd sneak into a lodge, and they would get together as men and brothers to share what commonality they had, even in that terrible conflict, that they shared a commonality, that they were men and they were brothers, and they all, even if they were fighting on different fronts to different ends, they still were trying to do something that was greater than themselves, and they had a level of respect for each other, you know. And that Freemasonry has tried to keep that kind of an attitude of ecumenicalism alive. But it's an interesting story, and we should be a little bit like that, to say we're not trying to eliminate the beliefs that don't align with each other. What we're trying to do is to include all of them, with all of their conflict, with all of their discord, to have a place in the tent together. And I think the left has been moving away from a pragmatic classical liberalism more toward some sort of a wild activist extreme liberalism that's really totally different. And that's a big reason why my support has shifted solidly away from being a liberal, as I had been in the past, and toward being a political conservative for this particular time. But really, I think when we vote, what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves, what party, what group is going to represent the values we care about the most. We all probably care about projecting strength in the world because we don't need war. We probably should be interested in economic stability because we don't need more hyperinflation and a harder time finding a job to provide for ourselves or our families. We probably all want a certain degree of free speech. We want to be able to express ourselves without fearing that we're going to be socially ostracized or retaliated against for expressing our opinions or for having convictions of some sort. And I really think that having freedom from censorship is very important, and being able to be part of a society that has an attitude of exceptionalism, to say, you know what, there's nothing wrong with making a video game with buff male characters and sexy female characters, because you know what, that sells well and people like it. Like, we don't have to make everything some kind of a woke propaganda piece. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about your positions on, you know, COVID vaccines, or you're talking about your positions on tax policy, or you're talking about content in a video game. Really, at the end of the day, we shouldn't feel like we're going to be punished if we don't agree with a specific narrative. And I think the folks on the right are definitely a lot more solid in that particular regard. Anyways, however you choose to vote, the bottom line is we should all be expressing our voice and our opinion. We should try to be involved in the political process, because the truth is we are blessed to have a democratic style of government here in the United States, and well, if you're from somewhere else, probably, and most of the Western nations of the world have some level of a democratic style of elective system, and we should participate in that, because if you don't use it, you might lose it. And no matter where we stand, we should all come together to understand, you know, we all are in this together. And I think there's a lot to be said for the community of gamers, especially male gamers, who have been probably taking refuge in games for our whole lives in some manner, one way or the other. No matter where we stand on politics, there's more that unites us than divides us, because we're all ultimately on the same journey. Always good luck on your adventure. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions about all things related to this election that we are going into. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.